What a question, Sam.
I'll check. Okay.
Yes. Wow.
Good afternoon, colleagues.
Okay.
So we are going to start with today's session. I'm going to hand over to Gerda to introduce our speaker today. Gerda, can we start?
Yes, thank you, Sim. So our speaker is Dr. Jean Farmer.
Sorry, Gerda, can I ask Lucy? Oh,
Yes.
recording. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Sim. Yes, our speaker is Jean Farmer, Dr. Jean Lee Farmer. She is a teaching and learning advisor in the Center for Teaching and Learning, like Sim and me and Karen and Anthea. And she's had a focus on the professional development of academics in that capacity, but also through the duration of her career, actually. And she's been very interested in researched ways in how the Black female academic can be supported in professional development. So she has a critical approach to higher education culture and contributes to critiquing the slow pace of transformation and the lack of diversification in how we teach and learn. And she's always searching for new ways to bring social justice to our teaching and learning. In her capacity as a teaching and learning advisor, she's the project manager of the Finno Fund. And in fact, she's just now at the Finno Writing Retreat where she will be presenting from. And she's also the project manager of the First Year Achievement Awards, which contributes a lot to welcoming first years. So welcome, Jean, over to you.
Thank you, Gerda, and thank you very much, Sim, for the introduction. Thank you to everybody who is attending here today. I look forward to this presentation and also to some interaction at the end of the presentation and for ideas as well on how to take my own interest in academic research further. So as Gerda says, I work at the Center for Teaching and Learning as an advisor, and my specific interest in my PhD was on Black women academics' experiences in higher education in South Africa. And the interest goes further to what can we as Stellenboschuniversity as an institution do to bring theory of narratives into our teaching and learning. I think that this is an important aspect of teaching and learning, to be aware of what our teachers, what our students are going through, their lived experiences in higher education. So with that, oops, I'm trying to just advance my slides, which worked without fail. Okay, so here they go. Okay, so the question that we ask is, how do higher education institutions account for the pace of transformation and the actions around transformation? So the purpose and possible power of critical race and post-colonial feminist theories can in fact help us with this task. Mercer 2009 says that post-colonial feminist approaches can enable us to situate the silent spectral power of colonial times as they appear in the production and reproduction of the marginalized and racialized and gendered others in contemporary times. And what she's saying there is that it seems as though there is this lingering presence in all of our interactions in our institutions. And these institutions, not only higher education institutions, but many other organizations that we encounter. So what critical race and post-colonial theories can do is that it can highlight this shadow. It helps us in theorizing the realities, the intersectional realities, race, gender, and class of people who are othered. but also it creates a space for the voices of the unheard. More than that, it allows institutions to navigate and investigate their own role in these powers that remain within the institutions. And it allows the individual to also investigate their own interplay, which either maintains or changes the status quo. So how is it that the individual or the group can investigate, can interrogate their own role in the interplay? Our thinking is often influenced by the political atmosphere of where we learned how to be in the world. So we have the basis of our educational background, our cultural background, our family that we grew up with, the communities within which we interacted as children. But if change is desired, then we need to look beyond what we have learned from birth. Mesereau in Lundgren and Pohl 2016 offers us a framework as the basis for individual and societal change. He says that transformation and transformative learning takes place in our institutions and in our own mindsets, and that it's not only one half of the party that needs to change and needs to do the interrogation. We all need to realize that we play a part. So ideally, what is required for transformative thinking to take place is we need a specific disorienting dilemma, Mesereau says. And in my PhD, I wrote that this would mean that a tragic or momentous event needs to occur in that particular zone where change is required. And then I said, but that likelihood is rare. But we have evidence over the past few weeks, 2 weeks, that the likelihood proved to be not so rare, because we've had a few incidents that has shown us that there's some urgency with which we need to address some issues. I say in 2021, I said what I said, and now I'm saying something different, that there's an urgency and we don't need to create a false dilemma because we are in the situation that we are in now. So, as I said, Mesereau says that transformative learning means that in childhood, learning is formative. We blame, or we can place the responsibility with our parents, with our families, with wherever we were socialized, the culture, the community. But in adulthood, learning needs to be transformative. And in working with our students where they are on the precipice of adulthood, we need to have them realize that they need to be seeing the distortions in their own beliefs, their feelings and their attitudes. Paulo Freire speaks towards this as well in the Pedagogy of the Oppressed, where he speaks about the 3 levels of consciousness, where we have the naive, we blame or compliment ourselves for where we are in the world. We blame or compliment our culture, our community, or our family. We say our pet. We also sometimes think that it's some kind of magical or godly situation that's placed us where we are. So this is the order of things, and this is just how things are supposed to be. Or we say our parents worked hard for us to get here. So, and other people's parents didn't work hard. So that is why they are left behind and marginalized. Our hope is that the students that we engage with will grow towards critical and then transformative levels of consciousness. And critical is where they start realizing that the system is what the system is because the system is not working towards change. And then we try to transform the system by challenging, engaging, and wanting to change what is happening. So how do we take this reality of SU further into our teaching and learning, and how do we engage our students on the societal realities that is happening in our immediate vicinity? We need to sometimes deliberately create those challenges, deliberately create discomfort, uncomfortable spaces for our students to engage in, because we know that the desired change is required. Our own behaviors are only changed by deliberate focus on our convictions. We need to, however, first know what our convictions are before we can focus on them. Change comes with critically engaging the reasons that we think and act as we do. So for students to move beyond the idea of magical or naive beliefs in why some of us are marginalized or oppressed and why others are privileged. Our practices are essentialized as reasons for certain phenomena, such as the low representation, which is what my study was on, Black women academics, but we can replace that with any other marginalized group. Importantly is we need to also realize our own sense of identity and the roles that we play. There's an interplay between the individual and the context, the individual and the institution, the individual and the social reality, or the social practices, and how do we contribute to the status quo or to changing what is happening. Sorry. Okay, so there's an urgency to creating spaces that conducive to effective and enhanced teaching and learning. Libovitz et al. And Winberg and Pallet in 2016 said that in order for us to address inequality and various discomforts at multiple levels in our context, we need to realize that professional learning should move beyond theory. And it's when we move beyond theory that we are actually able to use methods and methodologies that will start to create new theories. So how does institutional shift happen? We need to learn new ways to engage those entering our universities, whether they are the new academics or the students. Behari-Leak 2017, and staff involved in teaching and learning need to start considering their own roles and their engagement with those with whom they share teaching and learning spaces. So it's not only with our students, we also need to be conversing amongst ourselves. Our own sense of self and our sense of agency will feed into the change that we desire and that our students most certainly deserve. Critical reflection that is required on various modes of reflection can encourage interrogation of practices and interactions, and we can all impact how higher education evolves. We can all impact, and we need to recognize that we can impact how our own university can evolve, how our classrooms can evolve, all the teaching and learning spaces can evolve. So we interact on various levels, we work with various practitioners, and we aim to interrogate our own agency. Reflection, I think I took this from Karen Cattell Holden. Yes, reflection is more than just thinking. It is actively speaking, conversing, writing, and I must have added drawing. Apologies, Karen. I will reference you in that. Okay, so who are we? How do we feel in the spaces that we move around in? Who who are our students and how do our students feel? Separatism or apartheid has had a huge impact on the perceptions of who belongs in certain spaces, in institutions, and who does not. Who feels like an imposter and who feels like an owner of the space. And obviously not all individuals experience the context in the same way. Some of us feel like imposters, while others have a strong sense of ownership of the space. And as I said earlier, we need to move beyond the naive idea that we own the space because in the past it was built for us, or because it is our parents who worked hard to get us here, or we don't own the space because of where we come from. Where class, race, and gender do not distract from teaching and learning, more focus can be given on accessing and creating knowledge. Use 2008. And I think Behari-Leak has said something similar, that we can't move beyond epistemological or towards epistemological access, the perfect idea of epistemological access, when we have our students struggling with gender, race inequality, where some of our students are hungry, but even where some of our students have the idea that they own a space. If we look at the graduate attributes, how are we working towards the graduate attributes when students who have been at the university for 6 months or 18 months would still be going around feeling that they have less of a sense of belonging, or others, they have more of a sense of belonging in the space than their counterparts, than their peers. So it's at this point that I would ask you to please take a pen and a paper. I hope you have something close to you. I'd like to take you through a very short exercise. And if you would humor me with a piece of paper and a pen, so we can exercise how we can accommodate diverse classrooms and differences in experiences of our students. I'll give you 30 seconds. Okay. Right, so an example of a class exercise, and this is the exercise that I used in the narrative exercise, the narrative, in drawing out the narrative data for my PhD as well, where I interviewed Black women academics from various institutions in South Africa. And because I didn't know what their background was, I didn't know the language when I asked for participants, I wanted my participants to feel free without having to use language at first in drawing their context. So I'd like you to do half of the exercise that I asked them to do, and I want you to draw your current context of the university as you see it, the university and the surrounds. Consider the places that you frequent, Victoria Street, lecture halls, outside lecture rooms, your office, the passage in your office, restaurants, the tea room, anything. I'd like you to try and include as many spaces in the university as you can when you draw your context. And then to also include, whether it's further off, on campus or off campus, your living area. For the students, you can ask them to include their room in the residence, but also the social areas in their residence. So I'm going to give you maybe 3 minutes to draw this exercise. Gerda, can you give me an indication whether people are okay with this? Maybe they can comment in the chat that they are engaging with the exercise or not.
Okay, let's do that. Anybody can just pop a note in the exercise, in the chat, please, if you're okay, if you're doing it. On my side, I'm certainly drawing away. So for lack of a chat, I'm going to also do the name thing and also take the opportunity to welcome and greet someone. There is a colleague. Is it Marka? I think it's Marka. I couldn't see your name. Are you okay with it? Did you open your mic?
No,
There's Jody.
I just entered. I just joined the room.
Okay, you're welcome. Thank you for joining us. People are currently drawing their context, and there's Debbie, Marion, Jody, all confirming that they're happily drawing. Cornell says it's a bit difficult to do the exercise on another campus. Do it for your campus, Cornell. And then Adeline is obediently clicking away doing it. So it's working so far, Jean. Thanks.
Okay. If I have 5 people doing it, that's good.
And Mrs. Jacobs-Gwebu also confirms it's working for her. Thanks, colleagues. So, Jean, several colleagues are commenting in chat. Some are confessing that they're not good at drawing. Some say they're done, like Prof. Lizanne Klute, thank you. Several are making progress. So I think you can take it from there, Jean.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, Gerda. Right. So the 3 minutes are up anyway. So yes, many of my participants also said that they were not good at drawing, but you don't have to be good at drawing because I'm not going to give you any marks for this. It's not for the exam. So, right. So the next part of the exercise is you have numbers from 1 to 3, and you're going to mark the areas where you feel a strong sense of belonging with a 1, and where you feel the least sense of belonging with a 3, where you feel and kind of midway, yes, I belong, sometimes I feel comfortable, sometimes not. You can mark that with a 2, and I'll quickly give you a minute to do that.
Jean, would you mind just repeating the task briefly, please?
Yeah, so you've drawn your context, the university, the surrounds, your lecture, your office, wherever. So you'll have a number of spaces on your drawing. So on your drawing, you put a number. If it's your office where you feel a strong sense of belonging, or your tea room, you'll number that 1. And where you feel the least sense of belonging, you will number that 3. And 2 would be those intermediate spaces where you kind of feel comfortable, but not so comfortable. Okay, I'm moving on. So now I want you to quickly assess, do you have mostly ones, twos, threes? What is your level of belonging, your level of comfort in the spaces at the university? So you can just assign a number for yourself. And then an example of the kind of homework you can then give your students, because this would be a start to assessing, maybe, for want of a better word, where your students are at the institution. How do they feel in lecture rooms? How do they feel at McDonald's? How do they feel at the pubs? Because our students are probably going to mention all of those places. I think they move around on campus much more than we do and interact on the lawns and in the NLC and outside the NLC much more than lecturers and staff would. So I think that the student spaces, the students' context would probably be much broader than ours. You can give students a chance to interact just on their drawing in class if they wish to share. And for a homework reflection, you can ask the students about why they feel the way that they do about certain areas on campus. If they want to highlight one or two of the areas where they feel they strongly belong, they really love being in their residence, but they don't feel as comfortable in lecture hall 1 and feel better in the tutorials, then we can find out where it is that our students are engaging more. And then you can ask the students also to write about a very recent incident that affected the university community and how they were personally affected, how they think it affected someone who has a different background to theirs, and then comment on their own and the other person's level of belonging. So this is a way that we can bring students to engage with their own feelings, with where they are on maybe on the pedagogical scale that Freire was talking about. Are they still very naive about societal matters, societal realities, social justice? Are they moving towards critical and transformative thinking? We can also ask our students what other issues they feel would need to be addressed. They might come up with ideas such as what I came up with from my data, gendered language that's used on campus, that's used in meetings, in residences. Does it make you feel marginalized? Does it make you feel powerful? We have to also remember that the kind of aggressions, or no, I didn't want to use the word aggressions. The kind of marginalized or powerful feelings that students feel, and the students that we need to engage with are all of our students. And we need to bring our students to a realization that social justice is not just an issue for one part of our university community. So we can ask our students whether these issues are blind spots, whether people who commit certain, what's the word I'm looking for, Gerda? Incidents or things against others, whether it's microaggressions, whether it's due to pure ignorance, innocence, lack of engagement. And what we are doing in our classrooms is actually giving our students an opportunity to engage on these. And then how should the institution address this? Because personally, I was feeling that for a white male to address incidents of gender-based violence and racism on campus, that maybe some students feel triggered by that. Maybe some students feel sensitive to that it's not someone they would have wanted to address? Was the decisions made by the institution right to postpone the exams? So it's a way in for students to start thinking about ways that they can engage with institutional decisions, with things that are happening on campus. Also, we have to remember that microaggressions are really difficult to verbalize and hard to pinpoint. So giving students the opportunity to reflect on it, to write about it, might start to give us a vocabulary in addressing when people say to them, in response to them saying, I feel hurt by that, and someone else saying, I didn't mean it in that way, or you are imagining it. And why is even that a microaggression? And how can other students learn to not commit these microaggressions? Because we do know that for ourselves as well as for our students, we don't know what we don't know. So how do we start making one another aware that certain things are triggering to us, and maybe for your students to start creating a vocabulary for themselves for what happens. As a closing slide, I took out a part of my own out of my PhD in autoethnography, but from the biographical section, I adapted this piece, so you can read through it on your own. This is how it feels for a Black woman somewhere in between being an academic and a past staff to still be at the institution when incidents happen that are hurtful. And then we can open for
Okay, Jean, I'm not sure if it's me, but you were breaking there at the end and now you are frozen. Are you still with us?
I'm here. Sim, can you hear me?
Now I can, thanks. All right.
So I was explaining the last slide and saying people can read through it on their own and then we can engage.
Yes, okay, no, that much we heard. Yeah, colleagues, Jean, thank you so much. I don't have words. I'm going to straight shoot to Gerda to please get a word from the colleagues. I see a lot of people are clapping for you virtually, and it shows that they enjoyed the session. Gerda, can you?
Thanks. I'm actually going to start with a point you made in the chat function. And I want to invite you to put it, open your mic again, please, Sim, because we see that 5 people responded to the point you made. Thanks.
Yeah, and Jean, when you made us do this exercise, sorry, I don't remember the last one we did because it's the second time I get to be in a lucky to be in a session with that's facilitated by you. It was something totally not related to this. I think it was about methodologies. You are a presenter as a guest presenter in our PhD group, and I still remember that you made me feel this way. And I can't describe how I feel. And then I was just wondering, it invokes so many emotions, what you just presented. And can you perhaps provide advice to or suggestions to then how lecturers can, debrief students, a student like me, who will then realize something about, themselves or the environment, and, how do we, take care of the situation? How does a lecturer take care? Because this can't be a once-off exercise and then you leave me hanging. I need more. I hope I make sense.
Yes, you do make absolute sense, Simon, and that's a very good question. I don't know if anybody else in the audience maybe has a better response than I would have for you. I suppose that one would have to frame it for the students that, they might feel sensitive about certain instances. But also I can't see how we can get away from addressing the issues when we are shocked by things that do happen on campus, and where students are actually left alone with the news and the events that have happened, and we leave them alone to deal with it on their own. I don't think that the institution has got enough psychologists to deal with student sensitivities as it is, and I think that for lecturers to show openness and respect to students, that they are aware and willing to engage with students on these issues, where mostly our students are left alone to deal with a blowout after such incidents. I'm not sure what the right response would be, but I'm sure that leaving it alone and leaving it to just sit without addressing it might cause more injury than actually trying to address and engage our students and to change what is happening on campus and what happens on campus. Maybe we can get a response from someone else in the audience, because I certainly don't have all of the answers, but from myself, my own point of view, I feel that it is better to engage and address.
So thanks, Jean. Let's pick up on that suggestion to ask more colleagues in the audience. And we do have the benefit of some experts on that kind of topic. We also have hands up from Debbie and Marion. And we're certainly interested in what you want to say. For the moment, however, can we quickly see if there are any volunteers contributing to respond to Sim's question on how can we help debrief care for students when these feelings come up? And I specifically want to invite those who work with these kind of things. I see Claudia Sanderson is here. Thanks, Claudia. Also, Quentin Apollo. You guys have a lot of experience. And I also want to invite you, Prof. Teresh. Thank you, first of all, for joining. If there's any contribution on to answer Sim's question. How do we care for or debrief these students? So let's give them a moment to consider. Those that I've asked, it's because I think you have experience in it, Quentin Apollos, for instance. But meanwhile, let us hear Debbie and then Marion McKay after.
Hi. Yeah, so actually, I guess I was going to respond a little bit to that question. So I think there's two things that I wanted to say. I think that holding space for our students to be able to engage with their emotions and to think about what's happened and to try and verbalize how they're feeling is very important. But I think it's equally important for lecturers and staff to have that space to do the same thing. And I know that a lot of my colleagues, and probably most, all holding that kind of space for students. So I think something, and what I want to feed back on was that after the Fees Must Fall riots, then I did that. I held space for our engineering students, just the mechanical and mechatronics students. That's my department. I went to the second year, third year, and fourth year class groups, and I took one period. I asked the lecturers one lecture period, and spoke about transformation, diversity, and inclusion, and so on, and gave students chance to write written reflections. When I suggested doing that to our faculty management, they were like, if you want to do it, absolutely go ahead, but we are not touching it with the 10-foot barge pole. And so I was nervous about doing it, but I thought that it was really important. What I wasn't prepared for at all was how emotionally exhausted I was for 2 weeks after that. Just going through, when I gave the students a survey where they could do a kind of reflection and write, and just reading some of their reflections and the polarizing views of different students, what they fed back after having that discussion, was depressing, and it made me feel powerless and exhausted. So I think, Jean, I liked your quote at the end where you said, you know, you don't want to be the poster child for look where you can get, because it's exhausting. Holding space for this type of stuff, engaging with this kind of stuff is exhausting and tiring. And I think that a lot of people shy away from it because of that. So, but I think the actions on campus this week have just shown, as what we said in 2015, 2016, 2017, now how many years later, the more we ignore these conversations and don't engage with them because they're difficult and uncomfortable and exhausting, the more critical things become on campus.
Thanks, Debbie. Thanks a lot. We can also ask Mrs. Mdaka or Tulani Flatswayo. And I see another one from Equity Unit, Mr. Mulapo. Any advice from your side? Let's hear Quentin. Thanks, Quentin.
Good afternoon, colleagues. I hope you're well. Thank you so much, Dr. Farmer, for a very thought-provoking presentation. I think a lot of my work currently also intersects with what you've been sharing, and I like the idea of formation and transformation. So there's, I think what I would term a lived experiential education is what we come with into a university setting. And I think the two overarching ideas for me is that we don't receive students as a blank slate, as for you have a tabula rasa, but they have conditioned ideas, sets of beliefs that have been formed. And the transformative student experience at Stellenbosch University, in essence, is an interaction with the other. And often in the space, with regards to spatial justice, with regards to how space is set up, historically speaking, we speak of ownership. And I think it's, for me, a double-edged sword. The one is to hold space, but to hold space continually without transforming educational systems with regards to knowledge production in terms of epistemology and so forth, is kind of not doing the job holistically. And I would implore for staff members, academics, etc., to do the double-edged work of really bringing different epistemologies to the space, reconfiguring pedagogy, and in addition to that, to hold space for change and development. And this is tough work. It's difficult work because people have been conditioned to think a particular way in terms of their value systems, the way they believe and think about the world. And it's process work. And so I think holding space is one component, but it's imperative for us at this stage to really shift the game in terms of how we learn, what we learn, and how that is brought into equilibrium or the perspectives or epistemologies in terms of knowledge production is brought to the fore on an equal footing, also foregrounding African indigenous knowledge systems. And so those are my thoughts in response to your presentation. Thanks so much again, Dr. Farmer.
Thank you,
Thank
Quentin.
you very
Go ahead,
Quentin.
Jean. That was lovely, Quentin. Go ahead, Jean.
Yes, I want to respond to Quentin and to Debbie at the same time, and I'm hoping that Sim also in these responses receives some answers, some soothing for those feelings. And those feelings can never be denied. And I think that is also why it took me 10 years to do an autoethnography on my own experiences. And even now, thinking back, sometimes I become tearful of just listening to my own story, but also the stories that I'd listened to from other Black women academics, some of whom are professors who are leaders in the institutions, but the feelings remain the same. So I don't know how we get away from the feelings of embarrassment of being at an institution where these incidents still happen, the feelings of love that we have for all of our students. I was a lecturer in the English department, and I absolutely loved my students, and I loved the way that we could engage. And it hurts me to think that some of my students could have acted in the way that happened in the past 2 weeks. And one would hope that they wouldn't when they've engaged with people on a different level. So thank you also for acknowledging how exhausting and that we would like to see the end that we have in mind, but that it's so far off of the horizon. But it doesn't mean that we should sit back and do nothing. But what do we do? Feelings are going to be hurt. How do we ease that? How do we soothe that? How do we hold space for everybody in our institution?
Thanks, Jean. I think that point on holding space, Quentin, we also see Debbie acknowledging your point on holding space. Then holding space is actually not easy, and we need training in that. So I was hoping to hear Marion's voice. Marion, you had your hand up. And while Marion is doing that, I just want to invite our colleagues from Transformation and Equity units again to speak out, tell us how you can train us, where we can get help on how to care for students, how to hold space. Okay, let's hear Marion.
Thanks, Jean. That was really a very, very interesting and thought-provoking talk. I loved it. I consider myself to be able to draw, and you took me by surprise. So the drawing exercise for me was really interesting. And what I realized was I drew a lot of perspectives. I drew a lot of pillars and a lot of corridors and perspective views of lecture halls. And then when I put the numbers in, I realized that the building where I've spent 14 years, I don't feel at all welcome in the hallowed architecture of the J.H. Neethling. I look at it completely as an outsider. And for me, that really struck me, because if I'm feeling like that after 14 years with dedicated office space, looking over the Roy Plain, how are the undergrads feeling who do not have a single room in this building, this massive building that's supposed to be dedicated to wine science? The undergrads do not have a single room. They don't even have a laboratory any longer. They have to walk across campus to the other side, to the Paul van der Bijl building, which is about 15 minutes walk from campus. And it took me by surprise that the numbers that I was writing down were not ones and twos, they were twos and threes. So that's for a staff member. So the idea of holding space, I think, is really a really interesting one, because I don't think it's just the students that we need to hold space for. perhaps we need to occupy the space ourselves. Yeah, I was taken by surprise by that. What I absolutely loved about the exercise, though, was I am so looking for, it's not a welcoming mat. I'm looking for activities. I'm looking for thought-provoking. I hate the word icebreaker because it assumes that there's a layer of ice in place before you start. But I'm looking for things to talk to to bring in the self, to bring myself in, and to bring themselves in. And this is a beautiful, beautiful exercise. So thank you, Jean. I have really enjoyed it, and it was unexpected, as was your talk. Yes, really made me think.
Thanks, Marion. We see that spatial justice, as Quentin mentioned it, and Sim also opened the discussion. So physical space, yes, but also holding space in an interpersonal sense. So I would like to hear your point, Dr. Moses. I think you're from economics. Yes, you mentioned about visual redress. And yeah, would you like to open the mic and discuss that?
Gerda, actually, I didn't want to speak. I think it's pretty obvious that the industry of transformation in terms of the office itself and the people who head those offices, the industry itself is doing well in terms of the knowledge production and so on and so on. And but the actual work on the ground, that's gone nowhere, or it hasn't gone very far. And I think part of it is because we're sort of conflating visual redress or the change in demography in certain areas as actual transformation. And that absolutely is not happening. A lot of the power relationships that have always dominated, those are still there. We're still strangers, the same racial hierarchies in research, same racial hierarchies in teaching. But these are things that I don't have to explain to any audience at Stellenbosch because it's obvious. Yeah, so I'm not sure how much more than I can say than that. Thanks.
Thank you for expressing. And then Dr. Moses, I think you can see in the chat that Debbie agrees with you, if I can put it that way, Debbie. There's the redress that we can tick off, and then there's actually engaging with the pain. Now, I must say that the visual redress doesn't preclude or exclude those, but if I hear you right, you need a holistic approach, a contextual approach. And then again, can I hear if Daka or maybe Tulani Hletswayo would like to contribute about how do we hold space? How do we get trained as lecturers to have that confrontation with the other, as Quentin put it? Where can we turn to for such training?
Good afternoon, colleagues, and thank you to Dr. Farmer for such a beautiful presentation. You know, I'm sitting here, Gerda, and I've been hearing with your request for someone from the Transformation Office or the Equality Unit. And I'm sitting here and thinking that as a person who looks, okay, I work for the Equality Unit. I am responsible for managing, for instance, some of the events that were happening in terms of case managing, what was happening in terms of the case last week. So I'm thinking, like, when you asked that question and coming in here, I don't think I prepared myself much to contribute, because at the moment I feel I'm still trying to find myself as well from the events of last week. And I was thinking, I think I came in thinking that I want to fill up instead and hear what other colleagues, you know, their suggestions and all that from the events of last week. So maybe other colleagues from the Transformation Office. It's a pity the Transformation Office also has a presentation, a TLN presentation that Dr. Mkhize was presenting, and it was happening around about the same time. So maybe some of them are there. So yeah, I think that's it from me, Gerda.
Thank you so much. And Jean wants to add. No, Jean?
Yes, thank you so much, Dr. Aka and Aldridge for those comments. I just feel again that I have to say, Gerda, that this presentation was in no way in reaction to what happened 2 weeks ago. This presentation has been on the CTL books since last year. So it's just that it happens that to be at a time when many of us are feeling the sensitivity right outside of our heart, that it's being worn on the sleeve right now. But I also think that it's quite good that it happened now, because we think of these issues in relation to how we would engage with it. And what an important thing that came out of this is that, thanks to the point that Sim raised right at the start, is that the staff needs to work through their own feelings and thoughts around this as well. And how much more urgent is it to do, because we have the charges of our students that we also need to work with. How can we be tapped and sapped of our energy, leaving so little to give back to our students? We are the tools that we can work with in order to work with our students when we don't have the energy to hold those tools. So what is the institution going to do to take care of the staff?
If I can maybe, sorry, Jean, to come in there, if I can, we have very little time, so I do apologize for interrupting, but Mr. Mulapo of Equality Unit is ready to comment, if I understand correctly.
Brilliant.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, colleagues. Selom Lapo from HR. I'm actually responsible for employment equity within the institution. I've heard that you're looking for spaces, to have conversations of this nature. And I just wanted to make colleagues aware that we've got a program in HR. It's called the Circular Capacity Development Program. This is a program where we collaborate with the Transformation Office, the Equality Unit is involved, and also the Disability Unit. So there's a menu. If colleagues, if you don't mind, after this session, I can actually send you the program for this year. In fact, on the 27th of May, one of the topics that will be discussed, it's around transformation, institutional culture, and visual address. There's quite a number of programs lined up for the whole year. The attendance has not been that good, so we hope this year we'll be able to attract more staff members to attend those sessions. Yes, there is quite a number of programs that we are running within the institution. Unfortunately, we've been quite reactive. The incident that happened last week has actually made us aware that we need to do more in terms of capacity development. But yes, there is a platform for that that we've created. Yeah.
Fantastic, Selo. Thank you for sharing. Many of us have been to some of the Siakula sessions, and they are very good. We seem to be losing some colleagues, so I'm going to hand over to you, Sim, for wrapping up. And thank you, Selo. We look forward to your email.
Yes. All right. Yes. Thank you, Mr. Mulapo. We'll be looking forward to disseminating the information to the rest of our colleagues who joined today. So yeah, colleagues, can you please in the chats, Lucinda has been sending out our feedback form. Please, Jean would like to get your feedback in terms of how you thought about her presentation and other ideas that perhaps you have. If you want to perhaps continue the discussion, I'm sure Jean is open and willing to have those conversations. So thank you so much for being with us here today. This session was recorded and it will be circulated, or it will be uploaded on our Auxin resource web page about 10 days or a week from now. So thanks a lot, Jean, for such an insightful, thought-provoking and challenging presentation that you have made. So our next Auxin, ladies and gentlemen, will only be in July, on the 26th of July. We unfortunately will not have anything in June because of the semester break. Elizabeth Moll-Willard from the library will be presenting that session. I also wanted to thank Bibian, our international guest. I'm not sure if you are still with us. So thank you so much for being here, Bibian. Thank you. There you are. Thank you so much for joining our Auxin, and you are welcome to join for the rest of the year. All right. Colleagues, we are going to leave today's session. Prof. Ramjuganov as well. I saw you are here. Thank you so much for being here today. And I hope you listen to some of the conversations. And if you want to touch base with Jean or the CTL, you are welcome to do so. All right, colleagues, we have run out of time, but today's session is ending on a very bitter note. Gerda, our colleague who has been driving the ship, is leaving the CTL, and we are very saddened by those news. But lucky for us, she is not leaving the institution. She will still be joining Auxin, but this time she will be joining as a participant. So Gerda, we wish you all the best as CTL. And the rest of the Auxin team, we will still see you around. Can I give 5 seconds to you just to greet everyone and say bye?
Goodbye, and thank you very much for the presenter, the discussants, the attendants. Sim is about to say, but Auxin is about you. So no, it's not about me. So thank you, Sim, for taking over, and best wishes ahead. See you in the next one, colleagues.
Thank you so much, Gerda. Thank you, colleagues. Bye, everyone. We'll see you on the 26th of July. Jean, thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone, and bye-bye. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, Jean.